Welcome to the 100 Pounders meeting on Wednesday, June 25th, 2025. Today we have Meg M, who will speak with us. She first came to OA in April of 1985 and has a lot of experience in between then and now that she'll share. She lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota, but today joins us from Houston, where she's visiting her brother. Meg, please take it away.
Right. Hi, I'm Meg. I'm a food and sugar addict and super excited to be here. And I see some familiar faces, so that is awesome. So I will just share, when I first came on the scene, basically in 2004, when I came back after 14 years of relapse, I was 260 pounds or 118 kilos. And I was fat, I was angry, I was sarcastic. And again, it was all your fault. It was all your fault that I was unhappy and resentful and all of those things. So I was a prime candidate for walking into these rooms. I was smoking about a pack and a half to 2 packs of cigarettes a day. I was $35,000 in debt, which was similar to 22,000 British pounds. And in today's standards, that would be about $70,000 in US dollars and about 50,000 in British pounds. So I was not in the best place. I had no retirement money. So I was in OA for 5 years, from 1985 to about 1990. And as I've heard a relative say one time, I just couldn't handle success. So I went back out and ate my head off and gained even more weight. I mean, that was my high that I know of when I stepped on a scale, when I was brave enough to do so. So, where am I at today? So, I just celebrated 21 years of abstinence, back to back, current, and I've gone through a lot of changes. I got out of debt. And not only that, I was able to have a retirement fund because I just retired April 30th. I'm 66 years old. So, not only was I able to pay off all my debt, I was able to buy a house and retire. And I can work if I want to, but I don't have to. I'm not going to live lavishly, but I have enough to live on, and that is fine. I am less, I'm thinner now. I know that you'll show before pictures, but I'm going to stand up and just see. I got to take my sweater off. It's always cold in the houses in Houston. So I weigh, I'm going to back up a little bit here. Um, 140 pounds US, and I would say that's about 63 kilograms. And I've maintained that weight for, quite a few years. So I did it kind of like in two parts. The first part, I lost about half, and I thought, well, that's where it's going to be. I'm in my 50s. And then I changed my food plan and then went down. Overall, my salary tripled of those 21 years in recovery, and I am smoke-free for over 21 years. And a couple years in, my cholesterol was high, it was at 230. And after a year of releasing all artificial sweeteners, I was drinking probably 18 to 24 cans of Diet Cola a day, plus some other grown-up Kool-Aid and chewing gum and all of that razzmatazz. And I gave it up. And within a year, my cholesterol went from 230 down to 162. So those are my basic stats. And what have I done? Well, I look at my whole recovery as, what's my action plan? And I know that's one of the tools, but my action plan includes everything. Living the steps, not just working them, but incorporating this program into my daily life. And I am looking at life not so black and white, even though I can go there. If I'm highly agitated and so on, I can go black and white really fast. I've also had to learn that since I'm an addict, I have certain thinking patterns that my non-addict friends don't have because they'll be like, "What? You think that?" And it's like, "Yeah, yeah." So then I kind of tell them, "Well, this is how an addict thinks," and so on. And so I don't have to, hide behind all that. I've learned that I don't have to carry the shame of being a food addict. I know I was born this way. My earliest memory was at 11 months. A great aunt of mine had died. I was sitting on my dad's shoulders, and I remember pulling his hair and pulling his ears because I knew I was going to get a treat. It's kind of like a dog, hey, where's my treat? But I have been eating sugar, sugar, fat, fat, sugar, sugar my whole life. Well, and anything that isn't nailed down. I mean, if all you have is broccoli in the house, well, that's what I'm going to eat, 5 pound bag. It's not the most exciting thing, but if I'm looking to fill that void, that's exactly what I'm going to do. So I'm going to look at some basic overall that I really have benefited from living this program in my life. So I have worked and I live the 12 steps. Sometimes I work them sequentially. Sometimes I know I got to do a deep dive on step 4 and step 5. I just did another step 5 a few months ago because I knew I needed a tune up. And that's what I did. If I need to make amends, well, that's step 10. I will do that as soon as I can. And if something pops up from my past, then I know I've got to do that. So I don't have to wait until I come upon that. I do that. I've had wonderful and not so wonderful sponsors all throughout my life. My last sponsor, 45 years of abstinence and has been in program, I think, 48 years. So has really a lot of wisdom, experience, strength, and hope. I also learned over the years that I heard that I'm a newcomer until I have 10 years of abstinence. And I'll have to tell you, I really bristled at that because I thought, oh, newcomer, maybe a year. But how it was explained to me was the first 5 years when we're in program, a lot of times we focus on our physical recovery. Are we the right weight? Are we too thin? Are we just, are we thin enough? Do we need to gain weight? What kind of food are we eating? Are we measuring? Do we need to measure? What are people doing? What can I eat? What can I eat? All of those things because it's so individual. There's certain fruits that do not have sleepovers at my house because they always taste like more. I don't care. I could have a bathtub full of them and it still wouldn't be enough. And I know from the nutritionists I've gone to that a bathtub is not a serving measurement for health. So I was kind of disappointed about that. But anyway, the second 5 years, we really focus on our emotional recovery. And when I say I was angry and resentful and it was all your fault, it really took clearing the fog more than 30 days or 90 days or 100 days, whatever, to really start seeing my part in my life and in my interactions. Yes, I came from an addict riddled home. My 2 qualifiers at the beginning are now deceased. So they have no control over my life today, nor did they when I left home at 18 years of age. But I'll tell you, I held them accountable for a long time. Long, 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 long time. And so I focused on that. Now, granted, we're doing all 3 all the time. It's just where we're heavily weighted. And then after 10 years, it's kind of like dipping into a more spiritual recovery where I got the food down, I got the body down, I got my emotions under check, and now I can focus on a deeper spiritual recovery. And then I learned I'm not a long timer until I've had 20 years of abstinence. And it's like, oh, good grief. But of course, now that I'm on the other side of that, I feel like, oh, okay. But when I look at myself at earlier in recovery, it's kind of like, ooh, 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 she needs a little more learning. And not that I have to feel bad or sad about that. And again, I'm so glad I was never on a reality TV show pre-recovery or early days of recovery because I'd probably have to slit my throat if I saw myself. I remember pre-recovery, I was like, I remember telling my friends, I'm one of the best put together people I know. I wasn't. I was batshit crazy. So anyway, that's what we had going on. So what did I have to learn in all of this is that I had to live differently. I really had to live differently. So, one of the first things that I would say for me was the most powerful and most pivotal and most painful was releasing friends. I really saw the type of friends I had in my core were people who treated me poorly, who shamed me. And then in my emotional recovery, I had to look at the fact that, you know, I teach people how to treat me. And if I feel ashamed and I think it's okay for people to shame me, then I'm going to seek those people out because I'm going to repeat that pattern. I had to look at all the patterns in my life because one of my principles in living in recovery today is food is not an option for life's situations. So if I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm anxious, I'm terrified, I'm tired, I am confused, I'm disappointed, I do not reach for food except what is appropriated to me at my meal times. I usually eat 3 times a day, and sometimes I split out a meal, just depending on because of my food plan or whatever. I'll get into that a little later. But food is not an option, period. And so I really needed to look at, well, what am I going to do with those things so that I don't cause self-harm? Because overeating for me was self-harm. Calling up the phone, boy, it was amazing. I could easily pick up that phone when I was not in recovery and complain about people until the sun rose the next day. Boy, my challenge now when I pick up the phone and to talk to someone, hey, I'm having a rough day, or hey, I'd like to hear how you're doing today because I don't want to be inside of my head. But it's those kinds of living things that, that I look at. I went to a nutritionist after a couple of years in because my cholesterol was high. And I went in very skeptical and quite defensive because I knew everything there was to know about food. I knew calorie count, I knew all the ingredients, whatever. And I like that because, sitting at 260 pounds, you bet I knew everything. I could just imagine if I was giving advice to others, they'd be like, well, okay, I will follow your advice if I too want to weigh 260 pounds. I looked it up and it takes about 3,900 calories to maintain that. Now, it might have been maybe a little more, a little less on certain days, but what did I do in those days? Well, I sat and watched TV and I smoked and I ate. And then I picked up the phone and complained about life and people. That was my exciting existence. I even sat through reruns of reruns. And then I had great remorse because I hated my life and I was looking for something else. So I got 12 stepped back in when I came in out of my relapse fog. And it was a woman I worked with. And what I saw with her was she was pretty frenetic when she was not in recovery. And when she got in recovery, not only did I see her lose weight, and she weighed and measured her food because a group of us would go out to lunch. I mean, it was one of those jobs that I had where a lot of people liked each other, but she was more calm. She was more okay with who she was. So I asked her what she did. And she goes, well, I go to this thing called OA. And I said, yeah, I heard about that. And she goes, well, no, it's really great. Why don't you come with me? I said, nope, tried that, got it, done. So after the third time, she brought it up to me. And I calmly said to her, oh, good God, you act like you're working on commission. Did I start thinking maybe I need to go back in? And that's when I did. And I decided to work a very different program. So when I was in the first time, I really worked it more like a diet. So at that time, I was about 155 pounds. I'm sorry I don't have the kilos on that, but probably about 70, I'm going to guess. And I got way down to 120 pounds. I over-exercised, so I just swapped overeating for over-exercising. And, just wanted to be the perfect thinness, whatever that was. It was my definition. And I was still just as nuts. And I remember I binged in between there, but I think I had 4 years of abstinence in there before I left. I got into a relationship and he did not understand my plan of eating. And instead of saying, you know what, that's okay, I don't think we're a match, I stayed. And I gave up 2 programs I was working, and then I was off to the races in my relapse. Now, I have been to multiple nutritionists. My food plan has changed over the years. I used to eat, basically meats and vegetables and fats, or I'd say protein, fats, and carbohydrates, even though all plants are carbohydrates. I then had a plant-based food plan for about 12 or 13 years. And then about 6, 7 months ago, it stopped working for me. So I went to another nutritionist, and now I'm back to eating animal protein, carbohydrates, and fats. And I had to fully surrender yet again because I got some notoriety out of that. Oh, I eat a plant-based diet. Oh, aren't I special? No, I'm not. I'm just a compulsive overeater trying to work a program of recovery and just live a good and happy life. And so that my being, my countenance is something that someone wants to spend time with, that I'm not angry, bitter, and resentful. And so I did extra work. When I look at my action plan, it's like I'm looking at all the pieces and parts of my tools. Do I need a tweak on my food plan? Well, you know what? I don't know how to do that. Maybe I better find a professional. But again, I didn't always find the right professional throughout my life. It's like trial and error. And that's where my black and white thinking has tripped me up sometimes, where it's like, well, I already tried one. I should be able to figure it out. Or this one doesn't believe in this way and whatever. No, I'm going to try and I'm going to sometimes succeed and sometimes fail. I have added an additional 12-step meeting group to my recovery because that's what I needed. I have also, tried therapy. I also had to learn how to set boundaries. So again, like I said, I had to give up friends. I also had to give up beliefs. One belief was I continually underemployed myself, so I made less money. And how I dealt with that was I would be angry because people wouldn't see how intelligent and how worthy I am to work at this company. Again, that was mine. That was not theirs. And so that was the shift in belief going from pre-recovery to recovery. So I had to go through different jobs and learn how to be and learn new skills, ask for what I needed, ask for what I wanted. I had to learn all of those things along the way. And I had to learn without stopping off at the grocery store and getting my fortification, whatever that was. I would say one of the biggest things was too is being vulnerable.
10 minutes
And
left.
thank you. And I know we all go through that. And if we find the wrong person or the wrong people, then we say, forget it, all bets off, this is stupid, and whatever. I had to learn and find people along the way. And that's where I'm so glad I get to be in recovery over the decades because I have the opportunity to learn. Which brings me to my other principles I live by. I am 100%, not 99 or 57. I am 100% responsible for my abstinence. So if I go to a function and all they serve are my binge foods, I need to bring food with me. There are tons of tools out there. And if you don't know how to do it, reach out to your sponsor. We're also working on a new book, Living Abstinently, on tips and tricks on what do you do when you have to deal with a family fest or an event or go to a funeral or someone's in the hospital or you're traveling by air. I have done all of those things and I have a trusty lunchbox that has come with me on many, many journeys. And yes, people always ask, why are you eating that way? Oh, I wish I was that good. Oh, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, whatever. I just know I have to do what's for me. And so if it calls attention to me, it does. But you know what? It gives me an opportunity to talk about, hey, I'm a food addict and I found this great program and this is what I do. And I'll tell you what, when I go into that, it's amazing how the talking stops. And then maybe one person afterwards will approach me and say, hey, can you tell me a little bit more? And then I do. And then I always have in my glove compartment, I have the professional folder that I give to new doctors, dentists, my homeopath, nutritionists, whatever, and ask them, hey, do you know about OA? And I also have in my purse or my briefcase, where do I start? So in fact, if someone tells me, or I tell them where to go on the OA website, but here's something I can hand out. There's my 12-step work. So the other thing is living 12-step outside of meetings. So I've done a lot of service, and I know some people hear service and they think, but yet I love your whole lineup of how you can help this meeting. This is great. You know what service has helped me is that good old 12th tradition. Principles before personalities. I'll tell you what, I've worked with more people that make my nostrils flare. I have horns and a tail and fangs. And you know what? I cannot use food to deal with that situation or that person. I have to use my recovery skills. And again, those recovery skills are inherent to what I'm learning and doing in this program. So those are things that I think are, the most important. And 12-step work is really, what are you doing outside of your group? What are we doing? Are you sitting at a health fair? Not everybody's going to be a trustee or a delegate or a rep, but I'll tell you what, if you want an opportunity to meet people in your region or meet people all around the world, that is an opportunity to explore. I remember the first time I went to World and there was a woman who got up and said she was 42 years abstinent. I wanted to run up and throw myself at her feet. At that time, I had 7 years of abstinence. That seemed impossible. But today, because I interact with worldwide people, I hear all of that and I see all of that. And I see a difference. I see a difference in me. I am less frenetic. I am more calm. I don't, because I don't, people would say, Meg, you have a problem with anger? And I say, no, I don't. I get angry just fine. I have a hard time showing sadness, but I can show anger just like that. But I've learned now to just be quiet and to listen and to breathe through it. I'd like to say, do food pangs or food thoughts ever go away? No, they don't. They're just less. But if I have a food pang or food thoughts or food dream, what's the one thing that will get my attention? A food situation. Always. I could have my legs severed and I would be worried, oh my gosh, whatever. My addiction in me will be like, ooh, I could eat X for that because that'll take away the pain. Because physically it did until it didn't. I started getting full. The amount of food I could eat, I would get full before I'd get that high. That's the other thing that pushed me to the edge. But it gets my attention. So I look at, am I tired? Am I upset about something? Do I need to have a hard conversation with someone? Did I just hear a hard conversation about me? And how am I dealing with that? And am I reaching out to enough people? So I've learned that being sponsored and sponsoring are jewels, absolute jewels, because I get to develop better listening skills and hope that I am of service to that person and that I help them along. And there's times I really make mistakes and I flub up. You know what? There's a step for that. I can make amends. If I don't know how to do something, there's a step for that. And so I love this program, even though sometimes it's a bitch. That's all I can say. It's simple, but sometimes we just got to do the hard stuff. But when we walk through that in recovery, the pride and the sense of accomplishment that we have is far better than any sweet thing I have ever eaten because I don't have the residue of remorse and shame. I have the feeling that life is good and I can do this. I know there's a lot going on in our world right now. I know some people are probably dealing with a recent death or have death looming in front of you. or you have a hard work situation, or you're looking for work, or your family doesn't understand you. I have done hard things. I had to cut my parents off for 5 years because the situation was so violent and abusive. And yet things turned around because I did my work. I don't have to hate. I can understand and see people where they're at. But I also get to learn again what works for me, what are my boundaries, what makes my soul sing. And so the fact that I've lived through deaths, job losses, financial, insecurity, all of those things is that I just work this one day at a time. And I do what's requested of me, required of me in the sense of what makes it work. So 98% of the time I weigh and measure my food, not because that I'm special. It's because a serving size was the size of a bathtub. Well, in fact, it'd really be more like a jacuzzi. I don't want one of those little small bathtubs. And I had relapse where I gained a lot of weight. And when I look back at that, I don't want to be that person ever again. And so I don't fixate on that. I don't regret that past, but I use it as information to help me going forward. So it is so wonderful to see all of you here today wanting to be happy and healthy and whole to the best of our abilities. And the other thing, two things I've learned is that we are not perfect. We never will be. So whenever we try to strive for perfection, it's like we're never going to get there. But the other thing is that's okay because we're all imperfect. So it gives us the opportunity to meet people where they're at and hear their story. Ask someone for their story, especially someone who makes your nostrils flare, you have horns growing out of your head, and you have a tail. Maybe that's a person you want to listen to their story. I'm not saying you're going to walk off hand in hand and be best friends in the sunset, but you'll have a better understanding of where that person came from. I can't tell you how many times I look at someone, 2 minutes. Thank you. I look at someone and I think, oh, they've had an easy life, or life looked at this and this, and their story makes my hair stand on end. And I think, how did you make it? And again, the rooms of recovery. So I thank you. And I just leave with just be your best self, do what you need to, take 100% accountability for your abstinence, and don't make food a tool for coping with life. Use this program, integrate it in your life. And with that, I pass.